So, Kwade, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Lamide. Good morning, Shita.
Morning.
Good morning.
You're here for the big talk, the money talk, and we want to learn and tap from your knowledge. Now, the federal government is essentially saying that this 501 billion naira scheme, essentially, it clears years. It breaks a cycle of unpaid obligation. But in your opinion, from a fiscal policy standpoint, does this actually boost or materially help investor confidence on Nigeria's balance sheet?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start by saying the current achievement being celebrated by the administration is a very good one. It tells of the potentials that a lot of us have said about this country. This that we're saying is not something we are getting from outside fund, but investment on the part of people who believe in the government, and they have actually reached this. But my concern is actually always there. When we celebrate this kind of a thing, we ask ourselves the question, how did we get there? You're talking about so much debt on the part of the GENCOs, the TCN and the likes, and you're trying to clear it up. What is the mechanism in place not to get back to where we are? If we look at the current situation where we found ourselves, even as a nation, we are still borrowing. But don't forget, during the Obasanjo's regime, we had the likes of former Minister of Finance, Ngozi came then, worked tenaciously to make sure that our debts were forgiven, and we're thinking that was a clean slate for us to have a safe landing and move on as a nation. But ask yourself, where are we today? We still have so much debt that has engulfed us as a nation because the fundamental is actually wrong. So for me, it's a good thing on the part of the government achieving this. But it's really not anything to celebrate, because I looked at a majority of the structures actually being put in place. It's like 10 years to come. People will come back and tell you that the administration of our president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, cleared this outstanding. And here we are. If not that, by then, we'll be doubling what the debt would look like because of the wrong foundation. Then people will now be saying, what else do we do? Because now, the debt forgiveness and clearance that we had years back, thinking we're starting on a green slate as a nation, we've engulfed so much in the sense that we have not blocked. So I think areas of concentration when we look at this kind of a thing is, how did we accumulated those debts? What went wrong? What are the steps we are taking? I've already seen one that gives me so much bother. You know, I play in the sector. When I heard about free meters, everybody seems to be celebrating that particular. And I asked myself, is that a priority on the part of the government as we speak? When just this year we've had 2 grid collapse, you know, the impact of that on businesses on its own. And we have a minister, you know, bold enough and very proud as part of the renewed hope of giving free meters to people. That has created more confusion than beneficiary to the people. A lot of people have paid for these meters months back till now. They've not been installed. What is the position of minister on that? Rather than you coming to tell us that. So you can see misplacement of priority. These meters that we are sharing for free is not free to the government. It's at a cost.
Absolutely.
So what becomes of it in years to come? So for me, it's a good thing on the part of the government that they are able to raise bond, which is a long-term thing that they. But how do we intend to recoup back and pay back this bond years to come with some of the things that would have plowed it to do? Maybe 10 years to come now, we'll be talking about clearing another legacy debt. But how did we accumulate those debts? Question. Mr. President should be asking people that, I do not want a repeat of this. Let it be a clean slate where we'll live.
Oh, yeah. I like your perspective on this issue. Very interesting and very illuminating. But some may also have a different perspective, like being expressed, particularly on the issue of writing off our debts, which happened in the past. How did we get here after debts were written off? And we all know that it was only the Paris Club debt that was written off. We hold $30 billion. $18 billion was forgiven. We paid hard cash $12 billion. And that brought down the debt to GDP ratio to 7%, you know, at that time. But we still hold IMF and the World Bank at that point in time. Now, we have now brought in, you know, accumulated debts over a period of time. Some will argue that the $12 billion which we paid at that point in time, to Pariklop, could have as well been invested in the energy sector, either on our weak transmission lines, which are already over 50 years old.
That's right.
Or on, generating power. Because like you probably, I'm sure you know that many of the major electricity companies, like international companies like General Electric, Siemens, will not touch anything less than, 20,000 megawatts. But over the years, since the days of Dakoru, we've always been talking about 10,000 megawatts until just in the last 6 years, when we started appreciating the fact that if you keep talking about 10,000 megawatts as your target, there is no way how we will attract international players into that sector. Now, my own question is this. Based on those realities that, look, you cannot run away from them. What matters is what do you do with the money? Because you can pay off debt and then you're accumulating new ones without explaining what you are doing with it. What do you think is the sustainable path towards ensuring that we are not only addressing the GENCO's issue alone, because the GENCO's issue, they have a problem of cash liquidity, operating cost, and investors' confidence. With these steps taken by the government, do you think that solving the problem in the GENCO's alone, without looking at the transmission aspect of it, would solve the problem?
I would say absolutely no.
In terms of investors' confidence?
Yeah, well, in terms of investor confidence, you only be addressing the generating arm. I'm sure you know when it comes to this power sector, we have the three arms, the three legs. We have the generating aspect, we have the transmission, and we have the distribution arm. If you generate so much, as we speak, part of the problem we are faced with is that even the electricity being generated is not even going the way it should go because of the middle class, which is the transmission, which you and I understand that part is still being owned by the government and a lot of gap. The last administration worked seriously with Siemens to see how they can bridge the gap. The question as we speak today, where are we on the project? Not known to several people. During the last, before the 2013, we actually saw a situation where we unbundled the distribution arm. Have we seen any improvement in terms of investment from the disco themselves to actually take away the burden so that even what a lot should be clamoring or crying about is we now have, we should generate more because the distribution arm or the transmission arm has actually been taken care of. But that gap is still there, to the best of my knowledge. A lot of connection problem out there with the disco. If today we generate 20,000 megawatts of power supply, the distribution will still create a problem. Correct. Because of the cobwebs that we are. So of what benefit it is, so you'll be generating so much, that's where the wastages we are talking about will start happening. So I feel that government needs to address it. When you say you are unbundling, you sell this to the private sector, how much have you monitored in actually carrying out? A lot of them gave promises of actually giving transformers, because then I knew when they first came in, they will tell you that you need not to buy transformer. It's the responsibility of the disco, is the responsibility that they are supposed to provide. But up till today, a lot of people are still buying transformer in their community. How much have you monitored that the disco has fulfilled that part of the obligation that belongs to them? The one that Mr. Minister is celebrating as regard the issue of meter is the responsibility of the disco. That's right. Because you are supposed to provide assets that will accurately measure what your consumer is using to minimize the conflict between you and them. The transmission are not going to engage with the end users. It is the disco. So it should be their own. You should work out modalities in which the disco will be able to do that to its consumer. If they choose not to provide the meters and they are giving estimated billing and we refuse to pay, it becomes their burden. They accumulate a lot of bad debt that will be difficult for them to do. I feel that the center needs to concentrate more in the area of generation. Now we've taken care of the debts that are being owed to the GENCO. How far have we gone with the transmission? If we generate 20 megawatts today, are we ready to will that to the end users for them to justify, what is actually being pushed to them? If you will it to them, do we have the resources? In your area, be fair with yourself. If your transformer, I'm sure your transformer is much more than 15 years. You can imagine the depreciation level of that transformer. So if they supply 24/7 to that transformer, will it withstand it? The answer is no. There are a lot of dilapidated assets, even at the last wing, which is distribution. That needs to be rejuvenated. You still go around, see a lot of cobwebs. People still tap supply where they are not supposed to tap. Right. What are the disco doing? These are areas we should measure. I've said it that Mr. Minister is having misplacement of priority. The issue of metering is the business of the disco. If they cannot meter their customer, let them battle with the issue of the indebtedness on their part. Work on area of making sure that we have enough to generate, enough to transmit to them, and let them now be coming to say, we don't want this supply, it's becoming too much. Absolutely. And now look at area where we can push that out.
Looking at the fact that we're talking about, breaking a decade-long jinx, I do not think whether we've actually broken the jinx. So with all of the explanations you've given, even the discos are still not, really comfortable because of that industry, government, trust that has been breached over the years. But we are looking at solutions. And if you were to advise policymakers today, the governments, the investors, etc., what would be your top 3 priorities to ensure that this moment of breaking this jinx becomes a turning point, for reliable power and sustainable sector financing in Nigeria?
Okay, first and foremost, I think I will start with the area of securing some of the assets that we have. We still have issue of vandals, attacking some of the assets of the government.
One of the reasons we had, what's it called? Great collapse.
Great collapse.
Just like
repeatedly for like a few months in the northern region. You will hear about certain states, like 3, 4, 5 states,
Gombe
not having Gombe and the likes for several supply. If you must boost the confidence of investors to invest in this sector, we must guarantee that some of the assets that are actually being brought into use are protected maximally, so that with that alone, when you, even at home, if you decide to cut a cable and it's not properly connected, I'm sure you know what will resort to. It will bridge your supply and throw you out of supply for several hours or several days if care is not taken. So when we have people still vandalizing the asset of the government or of the investors without that guarantee, you might not see a lot of investors coming in to actually invest in that area. The second aspect of it is that can we have consistency in the area of our policies in this sector? Not having a somersaulting policy or short-term policy that I will always consider as political will. You just want to please the people. But on the long run, for people that are in there, knows that you are not going anywhere. If today you decide to give me meters in my house and there is no supply, what have I achieved? Nothing. I still provide the alternative power supply. And as far as you are concerned, you are not gaining anything on your part. The issue of cost-reflective tariff, have we maximized it? People will tell you today that they are on band A, but they are really not enjoying the 24-hour supply promised for those by the discos averagely. Well, you are still being charged that particular cost, except for few when you take it up upon yourself to challenge the disco that averagely we've all monitored to see how we can do. And the other aspect is...
So, but the federal government is subsidizing, the fact that people are not having to pay over 200 per unit.
The area of subsidy was people are still paying. I've had my issue with that. Some people are paying so much and government still say they are. It is the fund from the tariff that you are using to subsidize. As far as I'm concerned, when you say government is still subsidizing, people in Bande are paying 209, 225, and you have the other people at the other lower code about 68, 60 something. You can see the wide disparity. And I've seen a lot of people that said, please, I don't want to be on band A. Maybe you promised 12 to 15 hours for band B. I think that is enough for me to manage myself. I will augment with the alternative power supply, renewable energies to see how I augment the remaining hours. Because the disparity between band B and band A is wide. And a lot of people are saying, does it justify to be on band A? These are areas that we need to actually work on. Then automating the process will go a long way in assisting us in area of revenue collection, in area of actually tracking fault. This jet aid, People still go all out to see how to complain. Does any disco have understanding when there is a grid loss in a specific area without people reporting? Even when they report, how swift are you to attend to the issue with the current technologies that we have in there? I think we should start looking at way of investing in technology to have an on the spot, reports when there are failures, so that you can quickly attend to it. So if there is grid failure on the transformer as we speak, and we have to wait to report to the disco without disco himself having something to have a track from their office that this transformer is down, can we send the technical team to see what actually happened? If we refuse not to report that to you because we all enjoy alternative power supply, how do you gain the revenue that is expected to come to you? So investing massively in automation of some of these assets that we have, whether obsolete or the new one, we go a long way to actually...
You are very right about the necessity of automation, but I do know that with this recent grid collapse, the Nigeria Independent System Operator, NISO, did call an alarm and tell people there's a collapse of the grid, and they checked the transmission lines, and they did do their due diligence. I'm not arguing that we don't need automation.
No, that is at the higher cadre.
And predictive systems.
Yeah, that is at higher cadre. The SCADA panels that they make use of, the GENCO setting, is well automated. It will be unwise of us as a nation at that level. We don't have the automation to tell us when there is grid collapse. That is people that will now call them to say, it seems there is no light in Lagos, there is no light in Abuja. What actually happened? There is a central automation that monitors the generation transmission that tells you where there are. I'm talking about the end users. The people that actually contribute to what makes your own revenue back to the central, which is the TCN and the GENCO, to pay for what you've actually collected. As we speak, there are still a lot of ATC losses. People are still bypassing, using free electricity without not being properly monitored.
Now, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Shomi.
So that's a case of about energy theft.
Yeah.
That's a totally different thing. If you bear in mind, like you've correctly helped to focus on one thing, which is about funding the GENCOs appropriately. Now, take it from this issue of cost-reflective tariff. How do you hope to fund the GENCOs, given the fact that the federal government currently is trying to solve the legacy debt problem, which is 4 trillion naira legacy debt, which they are trying to resolve one way or the other through the bond market and all that, which is fine. They have done so well in that area. Now, how do you ensure that this debt will not accumulate again if you do not have a cost-reflective tariff on one part? Because what it means is federal government will continue to accumulate the same debt.
Yeah.
And how do you manage consumers' resistance, to the issue of hiking tariffs?
Yeah, you see, I've said that what the federal government need to do in this area is, let's have the same way we liberalize foreign exchange, liberalize practically everything. Let's have the same for power sector. Let people pay for what is actually being consumed. This area of subsidizing practically everything, you ask yourself, what indeed are we subsidizing? Because the value proposition is actually not there. A lot of people on Band A has resorted to the fact that they are not being subsidized. It is the cost reflective that they're actually paying. And a lot will want to enjoy the subsidy by saying, downgrade us to Band B and the likes. We are ready to do that. Until we have that equity. That was what we used to have. We used to have before now categorization by the class you belong to. Either a residential, a commercial, and the tariff at which you are paying, it's quite different, even though we are under the same feeder. And I think going back to that will be of help. Why do I say this? There are a lot of people on Band A, because the band is about the feeder that is supplying your area, not your transformer. It is the feeder that is actually being captured to say, these are priority feeders, and we are putting you on Band A. So everyone in that area, take for example, the feeder under a particular disco like Ikeja, that feeds the likes of Magodo Phase 1. You have the less privileged people who stays at Olowora, who cannot afford that 209. So I would have expected that if you go back to the old tariff system, where speaks to that, we have the R1, R2, R3, which graduated, your consumption upon measure to say you are a big man, we'll put you on R3 because this is what you consume. So whether we are all on band A or not on band A, it has segregated those that are low at the lower cadre, those are the higher cadre. Then if you are a commercial organization, we classify them there as C1, C2. Even the woman that is actually operating one small shop can be categorized as C1. It's different from somebody who is a big organization carrying out, so you can class down to be under C3. So I feel that the old measure of actually billing, to my own, we bring that equity rather than where you say it's actually on band A. Everybody in that area, whether you are middle class, you are elite, you are lower class, every one of us, we are paying. And it's not about what you consume. We can still give that relief and make sure that the aspiration of Mr. President to say let the poor breathe in every area, they can actually breathe in that area.
I'm wondering, while you were responding to my question a little earlier, you talked about vandalism. And I don't know whether we can, commend the comeback speed or mechanism that we have in place, especially when we have grid collapse, and then, because I follow the grid collapse, updates on Twitter, they tend to update us in national grid collapse. They read one of the tweets yesterday, they said grid collapse.
The national grid themselves commented grid collapse in caps lock. That was the information they had for us.
Absolutely. And then they kept giving us the megawatts there exactly
live
back to back. And that's like the speed, unlike before. Just when it rains, people would say, jocularly, that they have to spread the cables, they have to ensure that the cable is dry.
And make sure that there is sunshine.
They were tweeting and some people were living in darkness.
So do you think we need to commend that, comeback, speed that we've done? And what motive do you think those who are vandalizing the power supply, the power plants and all of that, what motive do they have?
Yeah, I must commend the swift response of NISO in this particular aspect. It's part of what technology has introduced. Everybody is actually being monitored. So when you are not in that space to give update, they are backlashing you from behind, bustling the social media. So you must, create that particular sector, units in every organization to make sure that you respond swiftly. Even when actions are not being taken, at least providing updates, engaging the people, we kind of, appease them. But my question is, must we have grid collapse? That is the area we must address. And we must put surveillance on some of the critical assets that we have. I know before now, there was engagement of the NSDC, the civil defense, to see how to protect some of these assets of ours. We should not get to the level at which you'll be complaining that it's because of vandals. The vandals are there. It's just that when you ask, why are the hackers out there? There are professional hackers. They wake up every day. As you are actually giving new thing on the system, they are working on how to actually deal with you to make sure that that thing does not work. Same on the part of the vandals. They are just out there to frustrate the effort of every government that you have in there.
To what end? Are they doing it for political reason? Are they doing it just for pure terrorism or pure malice?
I won't say malice. There are some people that they prefer to work in opposite direction and frustrate every effort that people are actually putting together. Some people, because I've asked myself, if the innovation of having good technology is there, why will somebody wants to say I'm a professional hacker, that all I need to do is to bring down your system at all costs? What does it stand to gain? But the fact remains that that is their own side. How much do we move? How many steps are we ahead of these vandals to make sure that they do not carry out their motive of sabotaging the efforts of the government? I think those are areas that we need to address. Make sure that we provide the surveillance that is required. These days, you have drones that monitors activities of things that goes on in an area, and you can provide speedy, response when people. We should not be reactive. We should be proactive.
I have one last
in that
question
area.
for you very quickly. Now, you spoke very heavily about Nigeria's power cadre, band A, band B, band C. And what that has done is essentially created power elitism in Nigeria. Is this electric elitism? Is this global best practice? Or are we just essentially managing electricity scarcity where we should be fixing it? Because in one area, in one part of the country, people are living in constant electricity. In other areas, it's complete darkness. So this band A, band B, band C, yes, it's a good measure being put in place. However, is it global best practice or is it electric elitism?
Well, I will refer to your last part to say it's electricity elistics. The fact remains that you go to some area for weeks, even for months, they do not have that power supply that you're talking about. I heard I was in a particular state, I shuttle Lagos, Ibadan. There are places when I go to in Ibadan, you don't even bother to consider electricity. You'll be on alternative power supply for days, and I mean for days. Call people in that particular area, they will tell you what they're actually fixing. And because I carry out a business that actually is in the power sector, we see a lot of these slaps. And that's why a lot of us have said, rather than creating that elitistic approach to this electricity, let there be a general platform of providing it, but categorize the people how they pay.
Yes.
So you can now say for the elites, this is you are residential, but after carrying out load assessment of your things, this is the class you belong to. This is the middle class. These are the lower class. Those days, we have people that are below the ladder that are on tariff A1, where their tariff is near to nothing because we understand their plight. Is that the same thing now? If you are on band A and you stay in an area where the feeder feeds those that are the lower cadre, everybody pay 209. So the high man can pay 209. But the woman that is actually having a room with just a bulb is actually struggling to pay 1,000 naira, of which if you have actually put him in the category of where it should be in the class of residential, you would have been able to take care of that particular thing.
That's all we have time for today. But Mr. Akunade, you've essentially said, let there be light. And hopefully there will
because that
be
is
light.
part of the mandate that God gave to us when he created this world.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your input. Now,
Absolutely.
Mr. Akunade is a chartered accountant and a public and policy affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's a great time to be with you.